Every 0DT trader I meet can tell me their commissions per contract to the penny. But if I ask, what's your average slippage per contract? What about your worst 5% of fills this year? Almost nobody has a great answer. I do. I track every fill in our fund, and on my own 2026 data, my worst exits almost doubled. My commissions obviously didn't move at all. That's the invisible gap between where you think you'll get out and where you actually get out. And it's the real cost of 0DT, and it lives in the tail. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 things. What slippage actually is, because backtest is measuring the wrong thing, why SPX 0DT is unquietly brutal for it, and my real numbers, how bad my worst exits actually got, and what you should be expecting to get out at for your fills this year. Because that unfair gap is literally the premium you're getting paid for. Let's start by fixing the definition. What slippage actually is. Slippage is the cost to cross the bid-ask spread at the moment you execute your order. Everything else, the distance from your stop to your fill, is the market moving against you, not what slippage actually is. Most people think slippage is the gap between where their stop price is and what they fill at. And your stop says, get me out at $3, and you get out at $3.20. You say 20 cents slippage. That's how a backtest estimates it, because the trigger price is the only reference it has. But the number is bundling 2 different things: the cost of crossing the bid-ask spread and the market moving against you between the time the trigger filled and you got filled. Real slippage is just the first part, the cost to cross the bid-ask spread at the moment you execute. That's it. And here's the piece premium sellers forget. When you stop out of a short option, you are buying it back. You sold it at the bid. Now you're buying at the ask. You opened as the seller, you close as the buyer. You pay for the spread on that round trip. And when your stop fires, you are the only one taking liquidity. You're crossing to whoever is resting on the other side. You are not collecting anymore. You are paying the full freight to get out of that position. So forget about stop versus fill. The real irreducible cost is 2 questions. How wide is the spread you have to cross, and how bad does it get when you're forced to cross that spread? That's what I measure. And to understand why it gets bad, you have to understand something almost nobody explains about how a stop actually works. Your stop is not resting on the exchange. This will change how you think about stops forever. Your stop order is not sitting at the exchange protecting you. It isn't resting in the order book. It's sitting at your broker as a trigger condition, nothing on the physical exchange. The instant your trigger price prints, the broker releases a brand new order into the market into whatever condition exists at the exact moment. If the spread just blew out because the underlying gapped, that's the spread you're crossing. The exchange never saw your stop. It only ever sees the live order that fires after your stop is triggered. A stop is a starting gun, not a shield. That's why your worst fills almost always show up when you're most desperate to get out. You're not protected at a price. You're launching an order live into the market conditions at a worst possible moment. Hold that thought. It is the entire story. The broker trap. Same stop with differing fills. This is also why the same stop logic gives you different results at differing brokers. And it's not because one has better execution for the other. 2 things can differ. First, the reference price your stop fires against. Some platforms may trigger off of last, mid, single bid, or double bid. So the same stop at 100% multiple fires at slightly different moments and crosses at slightly different prices. Functioning one platform's 100% stop out off of single bid can perform like another broker's 110% stop out off of a last trade. Second, how do the brokers handle the orders once they're triggered? Does it fire a raw market order or a marketable limit order? How fast does it take? That's the handling, and that could be a real difference. And here's the SPX specific truth that kills the better execution myth. For SPX, there's only one exchange. Every order ends up at the CBOE. No broker has a secret venue with better prices because that venue doesn't exist. Robinhood and Goldman Sachs get effectively the same execution when taking liquidity on a stop loss. What they have is different order handling. That's what you're actually choosing between. Don't shop for a magic fill. Shop for how they trigger your order and when the trigger fires, which brings us to why SPX specifically is its own animal. SPX isn't trading like options on a stock. A few structural facts drive everything. There's one exchange, it's cash settled, and they're European style options. SPX trades only on the CBOE. It settles in cash with no changing of hands, no assignments, no getting pinned into stock, and it's European exercise, so it can be exercised early. That's the change that the risk our people are quoting on. A designed market maker structure. SPX liquidity comes from market makers with obligations to quote and incentives to do so. They're not charities. They're being paid to take the other side, and the spread is part of how they make money. They have to provide a minimum liquidity and no more. When it's not a profitable time for them, they will stop quoting. Then the one that quietly taxes you, the tick size. For single leg options, SPX's minimum tick is 5 cents below $3 and 10 cents at or above $3. Think about that and what that means. On the $3 option, one tick is 10 cents. That's already 3% of the option's price you can't get out inside of. The grid is coarse. You can't shave a penny off of your exit the way you can with penny quoted names. And it's relatively bigger than the cheaper options. So a coarse grind, one venue and a dealer being paid to quote, now layer on the part that actually determines your slippage, liquidity. And liquidity is not the same everywhere in the option chain. Quick message from our sponsor. And today's sponsor for the video, who knew? It's us at MVH Capital Management. We help accredited investors diversify portfolios and manage risk through two actively managed funds. One, our Zero DTE flagship fund, and two, our multi-strategy fund. The execution discipline I'm walking through right now is the same discipline we run your money with. Back to it. People say SPX is liquid, like it's one number. It isn't. Liquidity changes by strike, size, and by time of day. Knowing the map is how you avoid the worst of it. By strikes. At the money is generally the deepest and tightest liquidity. Move far out of the money and it thins out, especially in size. The quote might look fine for a 1 lot and be useless for a 100 lot. By size, and this is a trap. Displayed size is not available size. The screen shows a spread, but the size of that spread might be tiny. A 1 lot and a 100 lot crossing the same displayed spread are going to face the same problems in fast markets. By time of day, and here's the counterintuitive thing. You'd think late in the day, as options go deep in or out of the money, things could get calmer. The opposite happens, even at the money. Near expiration, gamma is enormous. A market maker's hedge on an at the money zero DT option can swing from basically 0 delta to 100 delta over a few points of index movement. Their hedge is unstable. It can be worth nothing or everything in seconds. They're not facing normal inventory. They're facing a position that can flip on them violently with no time to recover. So they can widen the spread to get paid for the risk when markets move fast closer to the expiration of day. So the most slippage doesn't show up when the option is illiquid in the textbook sense. It shows up late in the day when dealer hedging risk can explode, which is exactly when your stops are most likely to be firing. That's the map. Now let me show you what it costs this year. This is 6 months of my own zero DT fills in 2026. I measure slippage per contract against the bid at the time and the cost across when I'd sell of where I'd actually buy it back. Here's what it says, and it's not what most people would expect. My median slippage is unchanged, still one tick, about 10 cents. Half the fills land at the smallest increment possible. By that, nothing has happened. But my average slippage is up quite a bit, from 21 cents to 31 cents. And the number I actually care about, the average of my worst 5% of fills, the tails. And those went from 75 cents to $1.80 a contract. That's roughly $75 to $180, which is a $105 difference. The tail more than doubled, and everything else didn't move at all. Sit with that, because that's the whole lesson. If you only look at a typical fill, you'd swear nothing has changed. The cost didn't move to the middle of the distribution. It moved to the tail. Slippage isn't a flat tax. It's a fat-tailed cost. Invisible most of the time, then it bites hard all at once, exactly when you're most desperate to get out. Vol spikes, fast markets move. If you're not measuring your worst 5% of fills, you're not measuring the thing that actually hurts you. And now we get to the part that changes how you should think about all of it. Here's where most people go wrong. They see the tail and think, I need to eliminate this. You can't. And wanting to misunderstands why you're getting paid in the first place. Why does the premium exist? Why does anyone pay to sell these options? Because you're agreeing to bear exactly this risk: the gap risk, the fast moving market risk, the can't get out clean risk. The violent exit and the premium you collect are two faces of the same coin. If you could always get out at your stop, clean every time, that premium wouldn't exist. Somebody would have already arbitraged it away years ago. So look at my data again through that lens. My median is still one tick. Most of the time, I get out completely clean. The premium isn't paying me for those. The premium is paying me for that $1.80 exit. The tail isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the risk premium showing its face, and it's the thing we're being compensated for to carry the options. So stop expecting to get filled at your stop. The expectation is a rookie error, and your backtest measuring stop versus a fill on clean historical data quietly taught it to you. The right posture isn't eliminate slippage, it's minimize the part you can control: price, size, and the part that you don't. So here's what I actually do about controlling a risk. Here are 6 rules. Rule 1, do not use market orders ever. A market order on a 10-cent tick option is a blank check. Fill me at whatever you want to the market makers. I use marketable limit orders and walk it towards the offer. I still take liquidity, I just don't hand the market a blank check at the exact moment spreads are the widest. I want to get out and am willing to place orders more aggressively to fill more aggressive than the mid price, but I'm not willing to pay anything and the market maker gets to decide. 2, cap the damage. I set a max price. Since I only manage the short leg, I want to set my max price cap less than the width of my spread. I set my price cap at 10 times the anticipated stop. If my stop is $6, I'm willing to pay up to $60 to buy it back. Whatever the market does in that moment, I know my worst case before I click. Rule 3, only manage the short. The short is where the risk and the slippage is going to live. The long is my defined risk fast stop. By only managing the short leg, I'm able to cross one bid-ask spread, and once I buy back my short, I'm able to flip my option portfolio from short gamma to long gamma. I'll cross the spread once to adjust or close the short. I don't pay another spread to micromanage the long. Let the hedge do its job. Rule 4, size like liquidity is real, not theoretical. Displayed size is not available size. A 1 lot and a 100 lot will get almost identical liquidity, but the key is that 1 lot or 100 lot fits your portfolio size. If the spread jumps from 5 to 25, both the 1 and 100 lot are paying $25 to buy back that option. If you're selling 100% of your account with a 1 lot, you're going to blow up your account. If that 100 lot is 4% of your account, you won't even notice the drawdown. Rule 5, loosen stops on cheap shorts. Another solution we are testing, and we have seen some anecdotal evidence thus far, is tightening our stops. For example, once a short trades down to 20 cents, I can update my stop to $1. But by updating my stop below $3, what we collective gives us more chances to get out at only $5 or a single tick when the options are below $3. This also allows you to pay 4 or 5 times your stop amount of that $1 and still get out at almost break even when markets move fast. Rule 6, don't pay to feel better. Closing early just to stop watching a paper loss is paying commission and spread for emotional relief. You've locked in a guaranteed loss with commissions and fees and bought nothing. If I size the trades and define the risk correctly, I let the structure do it work. Over managing it is its own hidden tax. You are guaranteeing that you pay the slippage slowly every day instead of once on a tail event. But don't be mistaken. You are locking in those losses to expected value each day. You sold the option to harvest the risk premium. Don't close it out and pay to cross the bid-ask spread when you don't need to. One more point. This is 6 months of real data of executing off a single bid trigger. My tail widened and my average slip-in increased dramatically from 21 cents to 31 cents. And my worst fill, 5%, went from 75 to $1.80, while my median slippage didn't move at all, still at 1 tick. The mature response to that is not burn the system down and start over. It's accept that the tail premium you're being compensated for, adjust your size and expectations, and keep executing your plan. Slippage is not a bug you eradicate. It's the bill you pay to collect the premium. Discipline beats tinkering every time. Structuring it like this is the way you go from tactics to truly running a mature book. 5 things to walk away with. 1. Slippage is the price to cross the spread when your order triggers, not the gap between your stop price and what it fills at. The gap is a backtest artifact. 2. Stopping out is taking liquidity, and you can improve fills when your order is directing across the bid-ask spread as soon as possible. You buy back at the ask, you pay the spread. 3. Your stop isn't resting at the exchange, and none do. It fires a fresh order into live condition and tracks at whatever the NBBO is at that time. That's why it's tail heavy and why option sellers are compensated for jump risk. 4. SPX is one exchange. No broker has secret better prices. Judge them on order handling. Don't compare them on differences between your stop price and fill price until you know how the orders are handled. 5. The cost lives in the tail, and the tail is the premium. Measure your worst 5% of stops and size accordingly. Don't wish it away. That's the blind spots fixed. You came into tracking the cost that didn't move. You're leaving able to see what actually did. Inside our funds at MBH Capital Management, this is how we treat execution. Minimize the part we can control, the price, and size honestly for the part that we don't. So here's my question for the commenters. What's the worst single fill you've ever taken by getting stopped out on a short option? And what are you measuring to make sure it doesn't happen again? Drop in the comments below.